Our nation's enterprise, the story of Ireland at work, presented by Jack White, The Wheels of Commerce.
Hello, Ned, yes? Well, I have the 715 engine here. I'll put them on this side first. Right.
There's no better place from which to study the workings of a railway than a signal cabin. To start my inquiry this week, I climbed up to join Signalman Lawrence Glenn of Galway in the West Road signal box at Amiens Street, Dublin. 12 programmes back, some of you may remember, we had a look at CIE and its handling of passengers. This week, in the last programme of the present series, we're going to see how our national transport system shifts the nation's goods by road and rail. This signal cabin is one link in the tremendously complex organisation that copes with the apparently simple task of delivering food to your table, fertilisers to your fields, cattle to the fair and the docks, that supplies, in short, a service vital to the agriculture, the industry and the commerce of the nation. So back we go to the cabin. Signalman Glenn presides over a row of 45 numbered levers controlling signals and points, with a chart of the section on which red lights automatically show him the position of every train for which he's responsible.
Yes? That diesel engine and van is going to be taken to the yard.
Yes. What do you do now? You throw?
So I pull this lever.
Yes.
So he has an amber light now to go into the yard.
I see. How many trains do you get through in a shift?
You could get around 50, 48.
That'd be in 8 hours, I suppose.
In 8 hours, yes. Engines and trains and specials of stock and goods trains, specials of empties and horse boxes, you know. There'd be some of them big trains and some of them small trains.
Yes.
Transfers for shipping and things like that.
What time do you change over?
2 to 10, 10 to 6 and 6 to 2.
Yeah. Which do you like best? Do you like night work?
Well, I don't care a whole lot for it, but I just pass it over. This is the call I made now, but leaving coming into Liffey Junction. He described it to me that time and I have to repeat it back to him.
So that's so as to show that you got it clearly.
Yes,
It's an acknowledgement.
It's acknowledged then.
I see.
You know, record the time.
Yes. There's a a light on over each of the signal levers. What does that mean?
Beg your pardon?
There's a light on
the
it.
lights are to indicate to you that the signals are light.
I see.
In case there's, and when they tell you, when you pull them, then it tells you when they're off.
Yes.
And when you pull them back, then it tells you when they're at danger.
So the signal, this shows you that the signals are responding to what you do here.
Yes, correct. Yes, there's the column there now on them 2 dots at Liffey Junction.
Yes, I see. Now, you get a general plan of the working for each day when? At the beginning of the week, is it?
Well, of course, there's a lot of it. It's the usual every day.
Yes.
Well, then there's fairs, you know, and things like that. And down the country, there are different dates for different fairs.
Yeah.
And you do have stock from them, shipping stock. And
yes.
there's certain days there's shipping stock from Sligo.
And you get special notification of those?
Yes, you do. You get special notification then.
How do you get to be a signalman? It's a very responsible position, this, isn't it?
It's fairly all right. Of course, it's just simple enough, the same as everything else when you get to know
When
it.
you get used to it.
Yes. Experience means a lot, and that's just
How long have you been at it?
since 1934.
I suppose you know your way around the,
Yes,
the signals
yes.
right now. In the goods yard at Kingsbridge, Chief Inspector John O'Toole told me how the goods are loaded for their various destinations. We're now standing in the goods store at Kingsbridge Station. All around us there are piles of crates, motor tyres, galvanised steel, ladders, boxes, dustbins, anything and everything that might conceivably be sent by rail. With me here is the Chief Inspector, Mr. John O'Toole. Mr. O'Toole, how long have you been with the railway?
I'm 44 years appointed in the railway service last June.
Is that so? Tell me what your job involves here.
My job is to look after supervision of all branches of outside work, the placing and obtaining wagons to meet all demands, and the supervision of staff, including the rostering of the staff.
Well, now, when a load of goods comes in here, possibly off a CIE lorry, into this store, and it's for some point, some destination down the country, what happens then?
Well, when it comes to the platform, if it's all for the one station, you put it in a wagon direct. If it's not for the one station, for separate places, you put it in on the floor of the store, and it's eventually loaded by the staff who are on duty for dealing with that matter.
Yes. Now, the wagons drawn up here, how are they arranged?
The wagons drawn up here are, the first is number 4 store bay. It deals with loading of all Cork, Kerry, Limerick and Mallow wagons. And then the number 3 bay deals with the Limerick wagons. And number 1 bay is the Waterford, Carlow, Kilkenny and stations like that branch.
I see. Well, now, when the wagon is loaded up in here and goes out to the shed, where does it go then?
It goes to the head of the yard and is shunted to each road on the head of the yard so as the train would be marshalled, leaving Kingsbridge goods.
I don't understand this marshalling of a train very well. What does it mean?
Well, in the first place, you make the formation of your train on a train road. We'll take, for instance, the 10 Cork goods. It's made up on what is usually known to us as the 1030 road. The Mallow wagons are collected on the Carlow road, which is the adjacent road, and the Limerick Junction wagons are collected on the Kilkenny road. Now, when the train is coming near the time to leave and the load is not complete, it's loaded off with the Mallow wagons.
Yes.
And that's why we call it marshal road, because if you didn't do that, each station would get mixed and it would cause a lot of delay remodelling the train.
A lot of people wondered during the war, when there were raids on marshalling yards, people who, like myself who'd never heard the term before, what's the point of air raids and those? I suppose it's because you've got the greatest concentration of goods wagons there.
Quite right.
They're dispersed, is that right?
That's quite right, yeah.
And then after they're assembled on these roads, the locomotives come to take them on their different routes.
The locomotive comes down the main line as far as we are concerned and comes into what we call the head of the yard, and it remains there at the Signalman until the train is completed, when it's brought back by the leading shunter, coupled up to the train. The guard gives the instructions to his driver where he's first leave off wagon or where he has to detach first, and then he gets into his van and the train leaves.
Responsibility for seeing that wagons are available to carry the goods falls to the Wagon Control Office. And here I spoke to Mr. Christy O'Mahony, the clerk in charge.
We control the movement and the supply of wagons. Each day, we ensure that wagons are in the right place at the right time and where demand is.
So you have control, as it were, of the whole pool of wagons on the system. How many wagons are there, by the way?
About 11,000, about 4,700 covered, about 4,000 open, about 1,200 cattle wagons, and the balance are miscellaneous trucks, such as bulk grain hoppers, oil cars, flat trucks for motor cars, container trucks, bulk grain hoppers, and so on.
How do you keep informed as to what the need is for wagons at any given point?
Well, we know definite trends. There are special trends at certain times of the year, and we're kept advised of these by our commercial section. The normal day-to-day working between the central points, such as Dublin, Cork and Limerick and Waterford, present very little difficulty. The only times we have trouble is in the beet season, the grain season, and then in the fertiliser season.
The movement of livestock is a pretty big part of your job, I suppose, isn't it?
Oh, it is indeed. We have to keep those 1,200 wagons turning the whole time. We have to deal with the operation of fairs, sales and marts. The trends in the livestock trade have changed radically in the past few years. Now we have to deal with a morning and an evening movement. We deal with fairs in the morning and sales in the afternoon.
I see. Formerly the whole traffic was concentrated on the fairs.
That's right, in the morning time.
Is this a joint road and rail operation?
Well, no. in some cases we have to call on the road to complete a delivery. But you could roughly say in most cases we carry stock from A to B by rail and the job finishes there.
And your very busiest time is the beet season, right now?
That's quite true. During the beet season, we have to provide about 2,200 wagons for the carriage of beet. We load 1,000 wagons each day, and of course have to make 1,000 empties available for the next day. We carried last year nearly 500,000 tonnes of beet, and we operate about 50 special trains to carry it to the factories.
I suppose quick turnaround of wagons is important to you at all times, especially now.
Oh, very much so. We have actually a team of surveyors. They are mobile. They go around the country assisting station masters as far as possible in soliciting the assistance of traders to discharge the wagons as quickly as possible. If we don't have a discharge, well, we could very easily have a shortage and therefore disappoint traders.
Yes, of course. But how do you keep track of where the wagons are?
Well, each day at 8 a.m., every station takes a census of the number of wagons on hands, laden and empty. And they record this under code headings and transmit it to us by teleprinter or telephone here to a central telegraph office at Amiens Street. They complete forms, and these forms detail the stations, all our stations at which wagons may be held, and they show us a clear picture of the disposition of our complete rolling stock each day. Now, we also have a secondary line of control. We have people in the Cork, Limerick and Waterford areas, and they let us know what their demands are, and we move the wagons to meet those demands for the following day.
The heaviest strain on goods traffic comes during the beet season, as Mr. O'Mahony said. Mr. Ned O'Flaherty, Transport Control and Planning Officer, told me how the campaign is planned.
At the start, the sugar company indicate to us what the size of the problem is. Generally, about early in September, they're in a position to do this. And we have meetings with them, meetings at which all the areas are represented. They indicate to us at that stage what the requirements are in the various locations. And generally it is possible to indicate reasonably exactly what the size of the plan is. Later on, meetings are held in the areas and detail is finalised and arrangements are polished up.
And what quantity of beet do you move in the course of a campaign?
On the rail side, we move practically 500,000 tonnes, and on the road side, we move practically 350,000 tonnes. That, of course, includes railhead beet.
So that's about 850,000 tonnes altogether?
Correct.
Now, it must be a very big job to mobilise enough capacity in the shape of wagons and lorries and so on to handle that big bulk of traffic.
Oh, indeed it is. On the road side, we are fortunate in a small way that the beet season happens at a time when demands for certain lorries are not as high as at other periods. For example, county council demands obviously are lower in winter time than in summer, and there is some small credit to be got in that respect. But generally it is true to say that we meet the beat through all sorts of pressures to release vehicles and tighten up and improve utilisation.
All day, every day, the Traffic Control Office keeps track of all traffic movements. As Mr. Jerry Mooney explained to me, it handles emergencies too, in the shape, say, of unexpected demands.
This section is responsible, in conjunction with our Wagon Control Office, for meeting situations such as you have mentioned. Our freight timetable is built on the assumption that the trains listed therein will cater for what we consider the normal run of traffic. But we do get seasonal demands which have to be budgeted for on the spot. At the moment there is in North Wall waste paper loading for Waterford. Now this consignment of waste paper could be anywhere in the region of 30 to 50 wagons, and it is obvious to us that we cannot cater for such a large number of vehicles on our scheduled freight services to Waterford. So,
Yes.
in order to get this traffic to Waterford, both for the consignee and for our own advantage, we must arrange a special. That must be done on the spot. It means getting from the local control people in Inchicore a locomotive, and then we must procure a crew to walk the train and find the path for the train to Waterford.
And suppose that the demand turns up somewhere outside Dublin. Can you still arrange transport?
Oh yes, we still arrange transport. For instance, I've just been advised now that there is in Carrigan Shore, which is not a locomotive depot, the nearest one to it is Waterford, that there are 15 wagons of cattle from the sales which must be moved tonight. Actually, 5 of these wagons are for shipping via Dublin and must reach a 9 a.m. deadline.
You weren't forewarned of that traffic?
Oh no prior advice of it at all. It meant that we had to arrange in conjunction with the area operating manager's office in Waterford a special train to Limerick Junction to connect with our mainline services at Limerick Junction to ensure that this traffic would reach North Wall in time for shipping.
A transport service can be faced with some very odd jobs indeed. A week or two ago, for instance, when an aeroplane came down across the Swords Road, the man they called in to get it off again was Mr. Paddy Whelan of CIE's Heavy Haulage Section.
Heavy haulage, I'd say, is the movement of any awkward loads, big heavy loads as a rule, from one position to another. We go and have a look at the job and we give them a price for doing the job, whatever position they'd want it moved to or whatever they'd want done, maybe up on heights. Very often they'd want to put down a lower level or something like that. Well, from there we carry on, do whatever they'd want us to do.
Yes. All the loads that you carry are not necessarily heavy ones, though.
Oh no, some loads might be very light loads actually, but they'd be awkward.
Yes.
For instance, you'd get fiberglass boats, long sheets of glass, maybe 25 or 6 feet long.
Yes.
And different things like that. I mean, it's not actually heavy haulage. I mean, I suppose in a lot of cases there may be no haulage at all and the load may be light. For instance, shifting in a house now or a big factory, you might want a factory movement now from, say, factories getting fairly big and they have only half a building and they're coming on, they get along, they buy a whole building then. They might want the machinery and stuff shifted from upstairs to just downstairs in the factory.
Yes.
Well, you often have to do that down to lift shafts or out to windows where
Yes.
the stairs and the floors won't take the weight, you see.
Well, is there any job like this that you're not prepared to tackle?
Oh no, there's no job. I mean, there's no heavy job in Ireland that can be done that CIE heavy haulage can't do. Actually, from the way we look at it, the impossible only takes a little longer and costs a little more.
I see.
That's-
Give me some examples of the things that you have moved.
Well, for instance, we put all the heavy machinery into Whitegate. That's
the
the
oil
Whitegate, into
refinery.
the oil refinery. We did
Yes.
all that. And a lot of the power stations all over Ireland.
Yeah.
And we have already given quotations. Actually, we have the job signed for the new power stations that won't be started for another year or so.
Why are you planning for that so far in advance?
Well, you see, actually, before they make the machinery, stators and generators and things like that, they have got to see, will they be able to be handled in this country? The same as every other country, will roads take them, bridges take them, are the heights all right and everything like that? Well, therefore, the people in England or Germany, wherever the case may be, they'll get on before. I mean, they're not going to make a stator say it'll cost 10 or 15,000 pounds and then see they can't put it into a place.
Yes. Well, do you move your traffic by road or rail, or do you use?
Well, the position as far as moving my road and rail, when we look at a job, some of the articles or some of the objects we're asked to move, they're too heavy, and I shouldn't say too heavy, they're too big and awkward for the rail, you see. Well, we'll move them by road. Well, now, there may be a lot of accessories with those articles. For instance, fittings and parts, maybe up to 20 or 30 ton of them. Well, we'll move those down by rail, you see, because it's much cheaper and more convenient. We move them by rail to the station, and in a lot of cases, when we're down there placing this thing in position, we'll take the small pieces out ourselves and put them alongside the other.
It may seem too good to be true, but I was told afterwards that Mr. Whelan's recreation is weightlifting. Now, to keep these thousands of wheels turning is a formidable task of maintenance. The man in charge of it is the mechanical engineer, Mr. Lucas Collins, whom I met in his office at Inchicore.
I am responsible for the maintenance of rolling stock, both on the rail side of CIE's activities and on the road side.
Is that activity spread around the country among different workshops?
It is. We have major workshops for the repair of rail rolling stock at Inchicore and Limerick, and in the case of road vehicles at Broadstone and at another works at Inchicore.
Well, is this maintenance pretty much a routine job? Do you bring in all wagons and coaches and so on at regular intervals for overhaul?
Well, yes, we operate a system of preventative maintenance, and in accordance with the schedules, the units are brought in at specified intervals for routine attention.
How many men do you employ altogether on maintenance?
On the rail side, the total number in the department amounts to slightly less than 3,000.
And how many of those are employed here in this enormous works at Inchicore?
Well, approximately half. We have in the workshops proper approximately 1,300 men, and we also have a maintenance depot here employing another few hundred men.
You have done building at Inchicore as well as repair work, haven't you?
Oh yes, it has always been a tradition for Inchicore to build its own rolling stock, and in the past steam locomotives, carriages and wagons have been built here. In recent years, with the introduction of diesel locomotives, we have also built a number of diesel locomotives.
Really? How far, when you say you build them, how much of the locomotive do you actually fabricate here? You bring in the power unit, I presume?
Yes, with diesel locomotives, it's not possible for us to undertake the manufacture of the diesel engine or either the electric or hydraulic transmissions. Those are units which we buy from other manufacturers, and then we take those units and complete what are known as the mechanical parts of the locomotive here at Inchicore.
From your point of view, has the introduction of dieselisation improved the mechanical efficiency of the whole system?
Oh, very much so. The argument for dieselisation is that it's a much more economical form of transport, and we have taken advantage of that to improve our operating costs.
But does it cut down on maintenance?
Yes, the maintenance cost for diesel units is lower than the similar cost for steam.
You still have some steam locomotives left, haven't you?
Yes, so far we have not taken the decision to completely dieselise the system, and we have a number of steam locomotives which are retained mainly for special traffic.
You're still building rolling stock here, as well as locomotives?
Yes, we always have a program of new building for carriages and wagons, and there are programs going through at the moment for new carriages and new wagons.
And that means going right through as far as painting and upholstering and so on, does it?
Oh yes, in the case of the passenger coaches, we do the complete job here, either by way of building or repair, and that of course would include the upholstery and painting.
Did you have any hand in the state coach which figured in the President's trip to Killarney during the last week?
Well, yes, this coach, which was built at Inchicore a number of years ago, was completely renovated and brought into line more or less with a higher standard, and was used first in connection with the Cardinal's visit here some time ago.
I see outside on one of the sidings a coach in some rather unfamiliar colours, a sort of orange biscuit colour, black and a white stripe. Is this a new livery for CIE coaches?
Yes, it has been decided recently to change the colour scheme used for railway coaches, and we have decided to change from the familiar pattern of green, and we've gone over to this new colour scheme, which is a combination of black, white and golden brown. And
that work will eventually be done at Inchicore as well?
Oh yes, the adoption of this new colour scheme means that any coaches after repair going through for painting will be painted in accordance with the new scheme.
The task of selling the CIE service to the public falls to Mr. P.G. Byrne, the commercial manager. I asked him to tell me how CIE evolved its new and more aggressive policy of going out and looking for business.
This really goes back to the new legislation which was introduced in the form of the 1958 Transport Act. This act relieved the board of certain obligations under which it laboured heretofore. They were principally the clauses referring to undue preference and common carrier obligation. Now, the result of the new legislation was that the board, for the first time, enjoyed commercial freedom. The freedom to go out really to sell its business. Now, in pursuit of that policy of hard selling, I might call it, we proceeded to select, carefully train, and appoint sales representatives. These men went into action, and we obtained a widespread sales coverage throughout the country. In addition to selling transport, these men had another function to perform. In meeting the public, they had to convince them that we were not alone looking for business, but that we could, in fact, give a good service, and that we could carry the merchants' and traders' goods at an acceptable cost to them.
Are you satisfied you've been able to arouse in traders, particularly, a keener interest in the use of CIE service?
Very definitely. In fact, I could say that the climate of public opinion in regard to public transport has changed very materially for the better over the past few years. I think perhaps the keynote of our new approach to transport was contained in the speech which our chairman made to the Dublin Chamber of Commerce in January 1959, and the note of confidence and determination in that policy statement commanded the respect of the trading community. I'm happy to say that our performance in the meantime has justified the confidence expressed at that time, and today I believe the public has a very high opinion of CIE and the quality of the services which it provides.
There we must leave the CIE story, and there we leave this series of programmes. We followed national institutions of all kinds, from books to bloodstock, from greyhounds and racecourse totes to research in medicine, physics and Celtic studies. I've learnt a great deal during the past 12 weeks, following up these stories on your behalf. I hope that you, for your part, have found them interesting, and that you felt them stimulate your faith and confidence in our nation's enterprise.
Our nation's enterprise, the story of Ireland at Work, was presented by Jack White and produced by Brian Malone.